Hey, tolerators, it is Natalie with your pre show announcements. This is your reminder that I have extreme FOMO. And because I have extreme FOMO, I don't want you to be missing out. I even have fear about what you could be missing out on, which is why I wanted to remind you that our Patreon is still running a 7-day free trial on all tiers. Within those tiers, you will get things like ad free episodes, early access to those episodes, bonus check ins with myself and some of our favorite guests, and most importantly, our new comedy series, The Misogyny Meltdown, where I do the unthinkable and combine feminine rage, yelling about everyday misogyny, and late night comedy type sketches and monologues. So, in the show notes, you will find all of the information on how to get to Patreon and claim that 7-day trial. I look forward to seeing you there. And remember, there are free things for you on Patreon as well. So make sure that you are following Patreon so you get sneak peeks into the content that I will be dropping each month and those free blog posts and other resources. Enjoy this episode, and I'll talk to you soon. Hey, tolerators, this is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie Katona, your weekly look at everyday misogyny. Today, my guest is Karen from the Deconversion Therapy Podcast, a show where her and her co-host dive deep into the oddities of Christianity. Oddities of Christianity is such a fun play on words. I love a rhyme.
Good. I learned from my pastor. You got to make it quick, snappy.
You got to make it razzle-dazzle. Today, we're going to be looking at the 7 deadly sins, relating them to misogyny, and just really getting nitty-gritty about why Christianity has made such a huge tool out of misogyny. Thanks for being here, Karen.
Thank you for inviting me. Do you like to be called Natalie or Nat?
Either one. I don't know why I've been Natalie my whole life, or Nanny. Like, that's what they're trying to get my nephew to call me. And one day I just started signing the emails with Nat, and I think it's a built-in signature that says my full name. So I was like, I'll just be quick here. They don't need to see my name twice.
That's good. Yeah, I'll call you Natalie. But if they're calling you Nanny, then you get paid because that's a paid position to be the nanny.
But why don't you give our listeners a background on you and deconversion therapy and how we ended up here?
Oh, Lord. So I'm glad you all have 7 days to listen to this. Um, my best friend growing up was Bonnie. Her grandmother wheeled her in a little stroller down to our house when we were both 1. We have been friends, even though we're very different, all our lives, went to the same to school, so forth. So we did everything together, youth group. And I mean, we fell out of touch because she went to a heathen university, University of Georgia. I stayed at Southern Baptist College and then became a foreign missionary. So she sort of deconstructed Christianity earlier than I did, but we have both ended up being agnostic atheists now. And 5 years ago, she said, let's start a podcast. 6 years ago, she said, let's start a podcast and just talk about the funny things we experienced. And it took me a year to agree. And then we started it. And she always said, I always thought we wouldn't have enough to talk about, but it is freaking every day. There's so much we don't talk about. So we don't deal with trauma. We are a comedy podcast and we try and pull the funny out. So, I mean, if we talked about everything, my gosh, we'd have so we do everything from these bodybuilders called the Power Team that used to travel around. They still do, to churches and like rip phone books and karate chop things and then talk how strong the Lord is. By the way, that sort of fell apart when the two guys who wanted to be leaders beat each other up. And then that went to court. But there's just so effing much. I don't know if I can cuss on
You're
here,
allowed to
so I'm
cuss.
being a God, thank Zeus. So yeah, and that's what we have fun with.
I love that. Number one, I love being strong for the Lord. I just love being ripped for the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised like, when you think of Baptists and Mormons and people who really like their religion is part of their culture, like Southern Christianity and things like that. And then I come in and I'm like, hi, I was raised Catholic, which means I've been to Mass at Christmas a time or two, maybe at most 5 times. And I am always surprised when a family wedding or funeral or event is held in a church because I'm like, do we care about this? What are we doing here? Like, what's happening?
And that's why we always joke that we believed, and they still do, Catholics aren't Christian. You guys thought you were. You were trying so hard. But, Southern Baptists, we know you're not. And that's what we grew up believing. But, you have to have teams or else you don't get that good money coming in to win and all that.
Catholics were really gun ho about being Catholic and really held strong with it when they decided that the best way for them to get political power was to go against abortion. And then they were like, we really care about this. We've decided. And it's like, great. Thank you.
Yes. And then evangelicals saw what you little Catholics did in the early 70s. And then they joined the fight, although they still don't like the Catholics. But hey, coattails, it doesn't matter if the coattails of the Pope or Billy Graham. Yeah.
Catholicism to me is just Christianity for like beauty queens. It's the pageantry. Like we get a snack in
Yeah.
the middle of it. There's
So
it's
nice.
just so nice. There's smoke sometimes,
Ooh.
like visual effects. But
Yeah.
so today we're going to be talking about the deadly sins and how my latest conspiracy theory is the deadly sins were written truly only for women and everyone else got to ignore them.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
And as I went through the deadly sins, which I guess I'll list them right now for people who never saw that movie Seven in the 90s, they're pride, greed, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth. And I was like, well, that could be all wrapped up into one sin, which is you're just not allowed to have a good time.
Right, right. Or relax. I'm looking at the last one. I'm like, oh, I would have been stoned, long time ago.
Oh, it would be really nice if people came up with time traveling technology. Like, wouldn't that be fun for rich men to then hurtle themselves into, different time zones instead of hurtling themselves to the bottom of the sea? And it would be more interesting. But I have always joked, I'm like, I can't time travel. I was like, I'll open my mouth once and they'll be like, that's a witch. She argued
Right.
back.
Absolutely. She spoke. What the
She's
fuck?
She said
Look
that
at
that
that.
color was made by light and not the Lord, and she's a witch. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, we're not allowed to have a good time, and we're definitely not allowed to relax. And then, we talk about a lot of everyday misogyny and how it just kind of seeps in. And a friend and I were talking on an episode, and she was like, as women, it has all been immoral for women to have pride. And I was like, oh, that's a deadly sin. And then I turn on Love is Blind, and some girl is arguing with another girl for some mediocre man. And I was like, oh, that's envy and lust. And they're getting the bad edit because they're the women. That's a sin. And it becomes one of those things where you're just clocking all of these things. And I truly didn't think that Christianity or Catholicism had that big effect, as big of effect on me as when we're talking about things like sexuality, pride, everyday life. And you go, well, why do we think that's immoral?
Yeah, I think I just talked to Dr. Eric Sprankle, who has written this great book that has nothing to do with religion, but about masturbation. He's a professor. And it was fascinating because it also, talks about the taboos sexually of in all religions. And when they're in every religion, then they're also in the society, even if people grew up atheists, like it doesn't matter. It's ingrained, just like misogyny is still ingrained in me. That's how it is. If every you see women cooking night and day, but top chefs are men, like that is the message. But I absolutely agree with you that uh, I wonder if the pride is like pride in your looks also,
Oh, yeah.
or pride in just, I don't know.
We were talking about this the other day, some friends and we were watching Love is Blind, and they're like,
Listen, that is our Bible now. Well, I agree.
that is my Lord.
Yep.
Andy Cohen. Andy Cohen is my God, and I don't know. So we were watching Love is Blind, and you know, I have said time and time again that this season of Love is Blind is just one more point of evidence on my conspiracy chart about the war against women. I was like, oh, we're really worried about a lot of things. No one's charting the war against women. I am. But, and a friend was like, I truly think that at the end of the day, he just wanted to tear her down. She was a woman who was beautiful. She was confident. She had a job. She knew that how to handle her money and her taxes and all of it. And he never asked her about it, but he was also mad he didn't know the ins and outs about it. And I think that at some point, because she was so proud of herself, he was like, I bet I could do something to ruin that. I was like, oh, has happened in 75% of my relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I am married to a strong man because he was raised in Australia, which is very highly atheist, although he was Christian at the time. We met on the mission field anyway, and raised by feminists. And still, like, we both have that internalized patriarchy. And I think it's absolutely it. Like all the little date gurus I see on apps, the men who are like, never disagree with your man in public. They will get threatened if you make more money than them. I'm like, you're dumb. You could first, you could be a sloth living off your powerful woman, but you're too dumb to get that yet. But just the whole idea of not breaking her down.
Yeah. Or they're smart enough to live off of her paycheck. But then it's that I'm also fascinated with this like internalized rage and resentment that weaker men will just carry around with them. And I'm like, I can literally feel it radiating off of him, but you keep telling me you're safe in your relationship. So I guess I'm going to mind my business.
Yeah. And I think that's it. I mean, I think it's everyone's experience. We can see different things in people that they haven't experienced yet. And I mean, I said I would love my job because I am also a writer and I work at coffee shops. I'd love my job to be just walking behind women on dates and going, get up, just just leave. You hear what's going on and you're like, oh God.
What goes hand in hand with the pride thing is I have been a woman who has sat on a date an hour too long because I'm like, well, I don't like him. And he kind of lied about how he looks. And then he's not charming. But I'm going to sit here because it's what I've been told. Like, I have to be polite. And who am I to get up and walk away?
Yes, and there's underlining fear of upsetting them and seeing a different side that you don't want to see. I mean, it is just, it's pretty scary.
It is. And then when it comes to greed, if you are a woman who is built like buying into the trad wife lifestyle, as TikTok has branded it, th- then you get this lovely life of people being like, you're doing exactly what you should be doing. You look exactly like Sally Draper from Mad Men, or Betty Draper's mom, Betty Draper from Mad Men, and it's all we could have ever wanted. But you're sucking that the money out of that man, and you were just in it for his pension anyways, you gold digging tramp. And it's like, I can't win.
Exactly. And I'm like, before it was called Trad Wives, it was called My Friends, whose husbands ended up leaving them and they had no marketable skills. I have been through this a lot. And I'm not saying that people need to work outside the home or whatever you want to do, but you better be prepared for, you've got to it's a different world. If you want to be a trad wife, get in Natalie's time machine and go back to the 1600s, die at 35,
Yeah.
and yeah.
And when it comes to greed, the way that that would manifest in my life, like pride was always, I was always the kid at the dinner table who was told to be more humble. You'd go, Natalie, how was your day? And I'm dramatic, so I wouldn't just give the fine byline. I would tell some amazing feat that I had defeated that day. And then a man would go, it's really attractive if you could be more humble. And I'm like, who am I trying to attract? The dog? What are we doing here? Like, we're in our home. And so I have a very clear vision of how pride was made to be a deadly sin in my life. And then when it's greed, it's when you finally do humble yourself enough to thwart that man and trap him. And then it's, what do you mean you want a little bit more of his time? What do you mean you want that time to be like quality time and you want him to plan things and be thoughtful? Who are you to want things? Like, things aren't perfect for girls who are dating. Have you heard?
Right. Gosh, that brings us back to Love is Blind. Everyone, stop this, go watch it, then get back on. But just, you've met someone that you're like, I'm in love with you. And then you go out every night or you spend the night, at your old home and you're like, that does not seem like you want to be with her. And then if she asks, I'd like to spend more time, she's called clingy. So, yeah.
And if I'm a woman who goes, hey, I've noticed that 33 men who I've never seen do anything at this office, theater, world, and they've all gotten raises and fancier titles than me. How about me? Then you're like, well, that's outrageous.
It's very true. And I'll tell you, I'm of a certain age. And if I hear things sometimes that are so bold by women, I can almost flinch because not because I don't like it, because I'm so unused to it that it's like shouting in a theater. It's like a awkward feeling, but it shouldn't be. But that's programming.
No, I have been having dreams, visions, premonitions about women in my past, and I'll wake up and I go, "Okay, I took this person's side in the friendship breakup." But I think what I really wanted to do was take the other woman's side, and internalized misogyny told me that she was dangerous. She was bold, she was extravagant, she dated, she was more than ready to take the world by storm and, had views and stuck to them. And now I am her. But when I was 20, I was like, oh, well, she's always making a big fuss out of something. And then when I was 27 in the office world, if you were the woman who was trying to get men to listen to us during meetings or was always complaining, I would literally just text friends. I go, I just wish we could have one day where I got to sit here and work and not have to like fight for some cause. And now I'm the lady who fights for the cause every day.
Right. Yeah. And then people are like, "Oh, you're bitter." And you're like, "I don't really totally feel bitter, but I could embrace it." Oh, yeah, I'm bitter. Why wouldn't I be? The violence. I can't even take a walk at night. Why wouldn't we be bitter?
And they'd never use the word greed because then you could accuse them of actually defaming your character. Instead, they'll go, well, aren't you grateful to be here? Out of anyone in the world, you got to have dinner with me.
Right. Listen, this is all you can eat breadsticks, Natalie.
We're at the Olive
Gosh,
Garden.
be grateful.
I took you to the Roadhouse. They have that cinnamon butter you like.
I have delivered. What more could you want?
I once dated a man that for visual impairment reasons couldn't drive. And he texted me one day and he was like, "Babe, come over. I just want to spend the day with you." And that was catnip to me once upon a time. And so I got in my little car and, went over there and he's like, "Well, I got to go to the grocery store. Do you think we could do that?" And I was like, "Okay, we're going to go to the grocery store and then our date will start." And then I walked through the grocery store. We did our thing. And then I bring him home and he's like, "Okay, thanks, babe. That was great. I'll see you later." And I went, "What? My beautiful day and my beautiful date." And I was like, well, like, was grocery shopping the date and the 180
Yes.
he did, where he was like, "So my time means nothing to you?" We had all of those conversations about cereal in aisle 8, and that was nothing. And I was like, well, I was kind of given the impression that you wanted to spend time with me, but what you really needed was a ride. And I would have given you a ride. Like, I understand you have errands, but you made this feel like this was going to be fun. And now that you're prepared for fun, you're like, "I'm going to watch the game with the boys." So you got to
There
go
you go.
home.
Those damn games.
The
Yeah.
damn games.
That's why, seriously. Like my husband, he played sports and all that, but Australian sports. So if he watches something, it's at 3 a.m.
That's wonderful.
I'm not a sports widow. I dated so many guys that it was like, especially Sundays, all the games. And I'd just sit there like a good Christian girlfriend.
One the same man, because again, I was very ungrateful. He could have been dating anyone, and he chose to make me drive him around. So, and it could have been anyone.
Right.
The same man was, I was a sports widow, and my sister and my brother-in-law, and I have said this on the podcast a couple of times, they are very, I think what makes their relationship the strongest is that they can still parallel play, which means that they're in the room together doing very different activities and not looking at one another. And they're like, "So this is love. Ooh, woo, woo."
Right.
And then when they're ready, but they also like sit on the couch and watch the TikToks that they sent to one another throughout the day at the same time. So you get to watch their reaction at the same time. So it's a lovely system. But I know that he's like, "You got so upset about the grocery store and how I wanted to watch the game with the boys. So I talked to the boys and you're going to watch the football game with us on Sunday." And I'm like, "Ooh, are you making potato skins? That's the only time it's worth it for me."
Right. Right.
Will there be snacks? So I carry a book in my purse wherever I go. Because I mean, it's the early 2000s. There wasn't TikTok. What was I supposed to do with my brain? So he turns on the game. I bring out my Kindle and and the first commercial break, he goes, "So you're just going to read the whole time?" And I'm like, "Yeah, isn't this cute? We're cuddling. I'm reading a book.
Right. Doing what we like.
You're cheering at the men in the tight pants. Like, what a dream." Like, what it, and he's like, "I thought you wanted to spend time with me. I thought that that was the whole thing that our fight was about." And I was like, "Yeah." And here we are doing, like, I should get something out of these 4 hours. And it was once again, I just don't think that you understand how this time together should be special to you and you're not treating it like it's special. And then it's gaslighting and I'm confused and I probably put my Kindle away and then I probably just sit there glassy eyed for 3 hours until I'm like, am I ready to go home? Or are you also going to use my body today for something that you want to
Right,
do?
right.
Like,
Yeah. Am
yeah.
I doing the football right? Does the hand on my arm, what does it make? Yeah, I get it.
And and when I eventually told my mom, like, I don't know, there's just something about it where I don't like the way that he talks to me. And again, because my mom is someone who's lived under patriarchy and misogyny and all of it, at some point, I have to tell the older women in my life, I'm like, hey, gather around. I just need us to know that it's fine that we have separate definitions for toxic, but you have to stop telling me that the men that I think are toxic aren't toxic because they are by my definition of it. Like,
That's what's so good. Like, I'm on TikTok and I'm a big proponent. Get TikTok in the hands of everyone 45 and older because it is where you see all the things that you didn't realize was either wrong or that is shifting or yet all that. I mean, I have grown daughters and, they're teaching me every day, but I think it's definitely changing. Like the red flags for me would not be the red. Yeah. And so I think I boiled it down at least for my daughters, like a guy who is willing to learn,
mhm,
just willing to learn. I saw a
feedback.
picture. Yes. I saw a picture. I can send it to you later of Mark Ruffalo, my lover, on the internet when he was in high school. We would have run the other way. He had the braces, but not just the braces, the ones that smelled of Pringles. You can
Yeah.
tell. And he's just a mess. And I'm like, for potential, girls, we look for someone who's willing to change their minds,
Yeah.
to be,
Yeah. 3 years ago, we didn't know who Papa Pedro Pascal was. And yet now he
right.
has a grip on all of our hearts because he's the only one. And Keanu Reeves, we never noticed that Keanu Reeves hovered his hand on women's backs so he wasn't touching them in a weird way.
I know.
And now we
Oh,
circle it in
yeah.
photos and we tell other men like this is what I'm asking. I'm just asking you to stop groping me. I'm at work. Like,
Right. Yeah. And you're my boss. And you're married. And yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
the list of it. And then if I move into another deadly sin, wrath, and I unleash my
Oh,
feminine rage,
watch it.
then
Listen, you're not being loving.
I'm not,
Not being caring if
I
you're
don't,
wrathful.
I don't think I understand, but the men on YouTube would like me to know that there actually are no problems. I've made this all up and I just love being angry.
It gives you something. And you know what? I see that evil in your eyes, which I get told a lot. The demons. And I say, okay, I did not. Well, I mean, we know Jesus is Aryan because I've seen the pictures, but I will tell my Hispanic father who's a Christian, look at these demon dark eyes. Um, yeah, I think ones again that don't listen, of course, we can speak with anger, but they take it as wrathful because wrathful is more personal and is to take someone down. We're just expressing anger. And that just, I'm doing great hand movements. If no one can see, it just disperses into the air. But that, yeah, the idea of wrathful, that we're really after them,
Hmm.
is their patriarchy, their misogyny, that they take it so personally.
Right. And it plays into racism and classism. And why would we give poor people health care? Then they're going to be health well nourished enough to want my job. And it's like, well, okay. That's one way of looking at it.
Right, right. Yeah, it's always pushing people down.
You know, I don't know if you watched it, but one of the focuses of my feminine rage lately, out of nowhere, because I told the people that I was watching it with that I was really enjoying myself. But one day I just woke up and I was like, fuck Ted Lasso and fuck Jason Sudeikis for making people believe that Ted Lasso is part of the revolution, because what he did was write a show about men for men to be like, don't worry, you guys are still good. Like, you're good guys, and we should be telling them more often.
It's such I mean, they are caught in this web of almost it's a little too late scenario. I don't like Ted Lasso, and my co-host is like, "Why don't you?" You know, it's not my thing. It's a bit and I wonder if it is a bit of that because we've seen it played out so many times, and it's hard in a way because we have such good radars now, and especially with the YouTube movement and the internet. We can see you, Jason Sudeikis, on dating someone younger or doing this or doing that. Um, I agree with you. That's all I can say. Yeah. Down with Ted Lasso. We're gonna tear you down.
That's right. But Brett Goldstein, I want to make sure that you know that you are still allowed within my family because you love the Muppets and you're going to be in Fraggle Rock, and I'm very
Oh,
happy
okay,
about
okay.
that. I'm
Yes.
very
And
happy for
Mark
you.
Ruffalo, you are still welcome. And I'm sure there are a few others.
Ryan
It better
Gosling.
be Steve. Ryan Gosling, for fuck's sake. Maybe Steve Carell. And if we find out shit about these people, and if you guys haven't finished watching Love is Blind, that is such a good example of being blindsided by people we thought were Pedro Pascals.
Yes.
So it's very hurtful to young women who want to date and go, how can we ever trust someone? But at the same time, it is a great lesson that they know how to act it out.
When it comes to like Ted Lasso, I was like, I don't think everyone understands that because Jason Sudeikis and a majority of the cast were male, that they had the privilege of being funny and soft and kind about toxic masculinity. But when I go that route and I make a joke about toxic masculinity, or I get angry about toxic masculinity, or I literally just look you in the eye and say, hey, that's internalized misogyny, I'm ghosted. Sometimes I get death threats. I'm told that I'm gaslit. I'm told that I'm stupid. Like,
Yeah, same. I consciously on Threads changed our icon from our logo to my face because so many people assume we're men because we're edgy or whatever. And I see a big difference. The mansplaining, the automatic defensiveness. I got so many DMs because I did some memes about Taylor Swift, and they were, and here came the men. I'm sick of hearing about her YD platform, whatever it was. And I'm like, this is a good way to sift people out.
well, yeah. But I also think that part of me like wants to be the scorned woman, because if we had made Teddy Lasso and it was like Teddy Mellencamp doing this thing and whatever, then the men would have made sure that it wasn't funded, it wasn't getting like there would be a million articles about how someone didn't smile enough and it was probably
Right.
Brie Larson.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and so the privilege of Ted Lasso really bothers me. And then I was like, and then all of the women jumped on board because they really enjoyed the show and they really like loved having a break from toxic masculinity, which I understand because I crave it every day. And and I think I only get it in the shower. But I was like, "I I'm mad that they get to do it. I'm just they they monetized my struggle and my strife, and then they were given trophies." and then and then if we try to do it, then no one shows up. Like, no one shows up
They
for.
wouldn't watch it. Right.
Everyone's so mad that Brie Larson got to be Miss Marvel, even though they masturbated to Miss Marvel in every comic book when they were growing up. But then Marvel made a movie and they were like, "Ah, she doesn't smile enough." And it's like, count how many times she smiled in the comic books. You can't, because all of the pages are stuck together. You lose
Ah,
her.
exactly. Exactly. Like everyone's Song of Solomon in the Bible. It's just
Yes.
stuck. Um, exactly.
It truly it does it's kind of fun to match up the sins to things that we've actually experienced, because my God, one of them's
Hmm.
gluttony, and we're not allowed to be fat.
No, no. And then if I mean, they will take pictures of people and then just tear them apart. But we've got the internalized within women also. So, we quickly adopt everything that the men have told us to adopt. Um, you're absolutely, and don't eat on a date except a salad.
Right. Meanwhile, I've been on dates. This is a separate man. I've been on a date where he decided that it was appropriate, because his bro was also at the restaurant, to enter some sort of wings challenge. And it was our first date, and you're just sweating profusely.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm like, and again, I still went on
Yikes.
more dates with him because I had no value in my time. And I was like, at
Uh-huh.
least someone
I know.
looked at me.
That's right.
And
And he
he,
performed a
yes,
talent.
yes.
He showed off for me.
Right. He beat unbeatable odds, and he ate so many hot wings. And and I was like, I'm not even allowed to number one, I'm not allowed to be fat. However, should you offer me food and I go, "Oh no, thank you," that's also a problem, because
Yeah.
now I'm being stuck up and
Mhm.
I'm being snooty. And it's one of those things where I can pinpoint all of the people who contributed to my disordered eating. And they're the people who get the most uncomfortable when I go, I would eat that, but that's going to start a binge. And then I don't want to deal with it. Like, or I'm having all of the food feels weird in my mouth. So I'm having like a real bad disordered eating week. And people are like, oh, ah. And I was like, but you're the people who trained me to have it. I thought that we were in this together.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the result of what you did. And I mean, that is America in a nutshell, first of all. But you're absolutely right. When basically anything, I was thinking the other day about cocktails, as one does, and there are male cocktails and female cocktails. And I'm like, that, how do we get here? Because my husband, always, he loves a Manhattan. He loves they're always in the short brown drinks. I like a fruity, top heavy, we're stupid. Yeah.
It is stupid how we gender things, because then,
Ginger drinks. Yeah.
God forbid, a man should love like orange juice or something and also want a Mai Tai. And I'm like, no, we should all have Mai Tais. They're the best.
I know.
And when it's fall, I do want to put brandy and or whiskey on everything.
Of
And I'm
course.
pretty sure at some point someone did say, well, now people are going to think you're masculine. And I go, oh God, no, another man might not look at me.
I know.
No,
And
let me,
he would be just the kind I would want to date. Right.
ah,
Yeah.
ugh. And also, it's one of those things where, number one, it's not even very safe for women to drink out in public anyways because of all of the ways that that can turn on you, and then it be your fault that someone put something in your drink. But then you're, like, supposed to be, like, a fun time girl. Like, "Oh, we want girls who are fun. We just can't you be fun?" And then the moment it's like, "Oh, she had 3 drinks too many, and now look what's happened to her, this fallen woman." And the court's not gonna stick up for her, the church isn't going to tell her that she can do whatever she wants to do, and it's just icky, is what it is.
It is icky, and it's all about autonomy, from the autonomy that we don't have in the laws to even how much we drink or all of that.
How much we eat, how much we drink. I'm not if if I go to a restaurant and I don't order a big meal, then I am like a big girl trader. Like I'm a betraying my kind because I should feel comfortable eating in public. But if I eat too much, then I get to be like, well, now am I insecure? That like it's never happened with food, but being a larger woman, I was always like, don't be the girl who falls. No one wants to see a big bitch go down. Like, it's embarrassing for everyone. Like, it's embarrassing for you. You fell. It's embarrassing for everyone because people had to watch your boobs and your rolls go in separate directions as you fell, and no one's going to be able to help you. So, like, just tiptoe everywhere you go. We're not falling
That's what,
down.
yeah, that's what I hear from some of my friends that they feel they're always being watched,
Mhm.
watching what they're ordering, what they're eating, what they're putting on their plate at a buffet. They feel monitored by people who want their monitors,
Yeah.
you know?
And
Yeah.
And I can equate it to, like, motherhood. Like, people are convinced that, like,
Mm.
everyone's always judging their parenting, which it depends. Are you letting your kid run through a parking lot? Then I'm like, "Ooh, grab that kid." Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but but usually I'm just going through Target focused on what I need to get at Target and asking myself why I didn't do the mobile pickup order and why I found myself in Target.
There you go. There
To
you go. Yeah.
actually hear what you're saying to your children. I'm too tired.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's the constant monitoring. And I just wonder, well, I guess that men have gotten a taste to it because after Me Too, they were like, well, I'd hug you, but I don't know if that's okay. Are you going to yell? Is someone else going to yell? Is someone going to put it on the internet? I used to call you baby cakes. Is that fine? Yes or no? Sign a paper.
I know. I've had that come across a lot. And the people who ask, they give themselves away. You are the one that I say no to then.
I love watching them also for the first time in their lives feel like that they would be monitored and then judged because they're so mad about it.
Yes. They really are.
And
And
I'm
they
like,
should be. And they should be scared.
they should be because the tides are
What's
turning.
wrong with them being scared for what? 4 years now?
Yeah.
Well, we've been scared for centuries.
I mean, but yeah, they're like, well, now all of a sudden people care about what I say. And it's like, well, we always cared about what you said.
Yeah,
There were never movies that backed us up. So we couldn't go,
right.
do you remember when we watched this movie
Mhm.
together and that woman sued her boss? And I thought I could sue my boss any day. I could do it. And I've documented all of the times.
Yeah, there you
and we
go.
and we had to have a conversation about that. And it's like people who are behaving correctly to other marginalized communities don't have to ask themselves if they're going to get arrested for not
Right.
being nice to that community.
Exactly.
Ugh.
Exactly.
Well, and then at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't care if you felt uncomfy that you had to be like watch what you said in the McDonald's parking lot. Because I know that I very much live in a town where we welcomed Brock Turner back with open arms after his buddies even testified against him because his dad had enough cash to be like, but we really care about his swimming career. So it's always going to work out for you. So I can't cry. I don't care about your epidemic of loneliness. I can't cry about it because you're always going to come out on top. And it's because, and then still complain about the system you yourself created.
Yep. And, you know, that triggered me there, the Brock Turner. God. Um, and that's it. You know, there are going to be a few good men caught in this situation or not doing anything wrong, but feeling that they can't go as far or do what they want. I think about the deconstruction, like movement area that I'm in, and I'm very outspoken. I have something going up today again about don't platform straight white men because they get the instant authority. I could do this for 5 years. There could be a new straight white man. Boom. Because of the voice. We're just trained to listen and go, that person is speaking truth where yes. So every time I put that, I always have a few guys. One told me that was racist as well as sexist. Haven't figured that one out. Oh, I guess the white. There we go. Uh oh. And, but it continues to happen in every little small area. So the people who are supposed to be deconstructing patriarchy and misogyny and racism are still doing the same fucking thing. And it makes me angry. Makes me angry.
You're seeing that in the deconstruction community. I'm seeing that by watching therapy be weaponized against my friends, where I'm like, no, you set a boundary and then he double dogged your boundary and went, well, your boundary goes against my boundary. So now what? And he knew you would cave
Yeah. Yeah.
because we've been told that boundaries deserve respect. And he got you. So I watched it. It was like the worst 20 minutes of my life. And at the end of it, I was like, I was just, I was so aghast. And I was like, oh my God, he literally walked around the conversation about what she was trying to tell him that she wanted to, and he held firm and he just kept going, well, what about my boundaries? And what about my value? And what about this? And you couldn't I couldn't even argue against it because I was like, he's saying all the right things, but the things are gaslighting me and maybe this entire bar. and I and I have to go home. I have
Right.
like
I must leave.
I must go. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't I don't actually want to give Clay on Love is Blind a trophy because he's like, hey, I know my dad fucked me in the head.
And then, but you're like, but he's giving an effort. And so for us, with anything still ingrained, we look at this guy, spoiler again, but we look at this guy who really did probably genuinely soften and change, and we think he's an A plus, and we find out that he is a C, then all of a sudden, and yeah, and we automatically, in our minds, we're still like, but he's an A in my heart and he's going to get there. You know, we can't.
Or because again, and it goes back to the like, what more could I ever want? Why am I asking for more? Me, the greedy little lady. It's like, okay, so he's a C, and I was really convinced I was at least getting a B plus. And now he says that he's done all of this work for me. And I feel that way in a lot of groups, like therapy groups. I'm sure it happens in the deconversion therapy in friend groups where it's like, well, he tried his best. So I guess I will still allow him to sleep in my bed. And it's like, ew, no, no.
Right, right. Yeah, it's we're very welcoming. We're a very welcoming people, we are. Us women, unfortunately.
Or we continue to go to their mega churches because they're like, well, he really, Chris Pratt's church really did decide that they would tell Chris Pratt to be like, my church is fine with gay people while they're funding anti gay legislation. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to not go on Sunday. That's when the bake sale is happening. And they said it. And then they had Chris Pratt say that everything was fine.
Right. And we might see Chris Pratt. And it's so, yeah, incestuous in a way.
It is. I know that you wanted to hit specifically more on that topic of how white men, can't be at the front of the deconversion process and how much that gets propped up. So I wanted to make sure that I also gave you time to do that, to talk more about deconversion and why it's important. Because I have to imagine that distancing yourself from Christianity also feels a lot like decentering men, where people are just looking at you and
Yes.
going, but why?
Right, right. And to me, I mean, deconstructing is when if you have a kitchen, you're redoing it, you tear it down to the bolts and you do it by yourself. So I did have, and it was a woman, and I'm sure she's lovely, say, hey, can I tell your followers about I coach people through deconstructing, and I'm like, we're adamantly against that. For me, I think it is such an individual process that if you follow someone, you have a hierarchy again. And the hierarchy of the church is so easily manipulated. And what we see a lot, especially me, is people who were on stage at churches and have left the church or their faith going to social media so they stay on a stage because they don't know how to not, especially the guy in the pork pie hat. He knows who I'm talking to. But yeah, and any kind of hierarchy, is dangerous, but especially if we don't flip it and consciously put people of color, LGBT, indigenous, and women above the straight white men. We're just you know doing a carbon copy of the church.
I think a lot of men who are still in my life truly don't understand why I'm not allowing a lot of other men in my life currently. And it's like, well, because at this point, I've done so much decentering work of misogyny and patriarchy and all of it. But I also know how my brain and my body has been trained to react to a new man giving me attention, that it'll become a hierarchy again. And it'll happen to guys I'm not attracted to guys that I don't even like, but then all of a sudden. And I can imagine that these people who are very charismatic and who have been on some stage their entire life, when you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly how I should also be thinking. But in order for you to actually do the deconstructing work, you have to figure out, number one, where your hurts are, and then what you actually value moving forward.
And we always say, do not follow us for any kind of authoritative stuff because people have a tendency. So, like our Facebook group that I'm the admin, I get in there once in a while, but I don't go in there if someone has a question, because some people go like, I'm going through this and that. I don't answer because mine will weigh more, and it shouldn't, but that's how we all were trained. This person is in charge of this page, so they must know more. And I think that's just a dangerous position, but it's so interesting how we could get two men to say exactly what we've been saying, and people will listen to it more as authoritative because just the tone of voice automatically triggers in our mind and body. This is someone who can lead, and I have this. My friend told me this saying once because I had a crush on a real tool of a celebrity at one point, and she had met him. She's in LA, and I'm like, God, I'm really like love this guy. And she's like, do you like him or are you ovulating? and it
Oh,
has stuck with me. It is the funniest thing as far as, is this just buying into some of the things that are ingrained in us to find a mate, to reproduce, to listen, to follow a man, to all these things. So now I just think of it, is that someone I should listen to, or am I mentally ovulating? Is my body tricking me? Yeah.
I have this conversation personally with friends who have been on the podcast or people that I'm like, okay, I can let my delulu and my insanity out for a moment. And I'm like, part of the reason that I choose to not date men until men have caught up to decentering themselves from the universe is because I know that internally my uterus and my ovaries will gaslight me into wanting to marry that man and have that man's children and all of it, because as soon as that man is no longer in my house, I forget all of those things. So I'm not letting the chemicals rush through my body anymore.
And, but it still stays with you mentally, which is so weird because, my days of producing Pedro Pascal's children are over. He's sad. But the it still has implanted on you with, yeah, just the sound of a voice that is authoritative, just all these types of things. Ryan Gosling right now could lead us all into a deep river and we would follow because he has a perfect mix of what we would be attracted to in our worst days, but also to our enlightened mind. He's a devil.
A demon, a demon. And the I'm Just Ken Oscar performance was a ritual in disguise. What was going
I
on under
know. Hmm.
what was going on under those Barbie heads, we don't even know. We don't know what they were doing.
It
It's
was, I know. They were wearing goats' heads
uh,
underneath. We know.
underneath.
Yeah.
At some point, they were chanting. I don't remember the words to the I'm Just Ken song that they chant, but they chant at some point. No, Ryan Gosling is a witch because Ryan Gosling is one of those guys who's like, I'm a man. And isn't that silly? Because he gets up to sing that stupid I'm Just Ken song. And I'm like, oh, this will be cute. And then he giggles at himself because he's like, I can't believe I'm fucking doing this at the Oscars. And I'm like, I would follow you into the sea. Where are we going, Ryan? And it's the same with all of those men who played Ken because I was like, you really can't be a misogynist and play a Ken in the Barbie movie because you're going to get so mad at everything that's said to you in the Barbie movie.
Right. Right. And I mean, that's where we all connect with him. He's got us all on a string, Natalie. I'm seeing it now. We've been
I mean, I thought it was Andy Cohen, but maybe he's my new prophet because I have been called out on that before from a friend who was like, is Ryan Gosling a really good ally or did he just clap for Lily Gladstone and you liked it? And I was like, it could be both.
shut up. No
Shut
one's
up.
talking to you.
He
Yeah,
cried. He
I know.
cried.
He's an actor though.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can tell real tears. And I mean that's the thing. It's tough. It's tough. Now, I do think of good guys I know in this sort of deconstruction era and I'm like I want to just say sorry, you were born at the wrong time. Like any tennis playing woman that was born when the Venus sisters existed, like I'm sorry. You drew the short straw and it's the same with all of this. Like, yeah, you might have good things to say. And I know it's your one little life, but not now.
And part of the whole realizing that my body has either a mental or a chemical pattern that'll make me go, ooh, yes, man. Ooh, yes, babies. I then had to sit with it. And we were doing another episode that accidentally came to be about religion, which when it was supposed to be about Southern female culture. And I was like, wait, hold
Same,
on.
same.
I think God has hurt me. And she was like, okay, lean in. Like I go, wait, hold on. I think God has hurt me. And I I finally told a lot of people in my life, I go, "You know, when I have to boil it down, I've only enjoyed spending time with women, even though I've had sex with men." I go, and I only think that ladies are pretty enough to actually pull off all of the things that they pull off. And every time I let a mediocre looking man do something, I'm like, oh God, and you weren't even good looking. You weren't Ryan Gosling. And then I was like, oh God wouldn't let me be gay even though I wasn't in his church. I still got
Exactly.
the message.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing. It's like, how unfair. How unfair.
All of the things that I never considered. Dating around, being bisexual, open relationships, all of it, because at some point I was like, no, that's disappointing. It's going to disappoint your dad or God, or someone's going to cry about it. And then you're going to have to do a lot of explaining. And I'm also very late. I used to be very lazy about, like, I don't want to explain why I'm bisexual now. I just want to do it. And then I want you to shut up. Like, and, and then I just started talking about being attracted to women like I had been doing it since I was 12 years old. And people were like, who, what's, and then I brought my friend Annie to my dad's wedding and people were like, ah, who? And I was like,
Is right.
this is Annie and I'm in love with her. And they're like, in a babysitter's club way or in a love lies bleeding kind of way. And I was like, column A, column B. I don't know. We're going to dance. So
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. And I mean, I love the freedom that I see of people, especially ones growing up now who have so much less of that, even when they're Christian. They're like,
mhm.
LGBT doesn't bother me. And so they have, like, they can explore that. They can think about it where it used to be, you don't even think. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
honestly. It That's a good point too, because I, as a woman who studies everyday misogyny, live in the doom and gloom a lot. I'm like, it's never
I hear
getting
you.
better. They wouldn't give Greta a trophy. And I was like, you gave Jason Sudeikis a trophy.
Right,
Give
right.
Greta a trophy. And then I was like, oh no, the internet's going to be big mad at Emma for winning over Lily, even though Emma was sad about it too. And I like Emma, but I also like Lily. So I'm just going to stay off TikTok because they're going to make me cry. And
Right, right.
so it's nice to hear that, like, as a person with a different perspective than me, and more people have come into my life to go, hey, Natalie, it turns out that even though Brittany wrote that memoir, it is better than it was for you in 2002 for women today. Don't worry about it as much. And I'm like, okay, do you promise? Because Brittany's still locked in her house. And they're like, yes, it's gonna be okay. And I'm like, okay.
I do the same thing, and uh, I guess sometimes when I pull back, I mean, my focus now is like, if they can legislate it, we have to follow it. So those are the parts that really scare me, um, policy making. But when we look at, like, my daughter is now 26, and we grew up in the South. Everyone's a Christian. All her friends are Christian. All of them are like, we don't care if trans people use the bathroom. We know who they are in the school. We've been friends with them forever. We're not threatened by them. They can come in the bathroom. It is a different mindset than you hear on the news, because it sounds like there's someone coming from the car park who's trans that they didn't know in third grade, and they have knives in their hands, whatever. But I do see, like, a lot of things in the culture that are changing. Makes me a little hopeful. We'll
I
see.
know. Thank goodness. I'm going to move us to our little closing ceremony. So at the end of it, we like to hand people a nice little life lesson that they can carry with themselves based on our experiences with the deadly sins and deconstructing and decentering. And then we manifest for a better future because I'm a witch.
Yeah, I'd be happy. What would be your manifestation or your takeaway? Or
I think my takeaway is about the people on the stage, especially because I admitted on a hot mic that I would let Ryan Gosling drown me. I would be like, yeah, I mean, true ally Ken. I'd wear my I'm Knuff sweatshirt right into the sea. So I think really, and I think it hits with the Ted Lasso thing and all of it, just paying attention to who's giving you the message and what's actually behind, like, what do they get out of it? Like, if a man is at a bar spouting, because I've had this happen to me in relationships, if a man is just repeating all of the feminist language back to me with new adjectives, it's because he's looking to get something too, and he's trying to meet me at my level. So just be aware of who's on the stage, even if it's me. Who am I?
right, right.
Just a lustful lady for Kristen Stewart.
Exactly. You can't, it's just, you're too precious. I think I'm going to take away that I really need to think about the whole Ted Lasso thing because there's been something that's annoyed me and irked me about it. And maybe you've spoken what it is. So mine is very similar to yours that I really want to, look into those things. I mean, the best thing is having someone new, you, come into my life and say some other things.
Yes, I
That's
agree.
that's really how, yeah.
Yeah, I with when it comes to the Jason Sudeikis thing, I'm like, does Jason Sudeikis believe in non-toxic masculinity, or did he like a paycheck?
I know. I know. I hear you.
Or did he want to make sure he could keep dating after we all know what he did? Like,
That's it's very, very, very
yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
And then for my manifestation, and I don't mean close the murder gap, ladies, even though sometimes I tell you to do that. But I would like marginalized voices to get a little more deadly. Maybe it's more lust. Maybe it's
Mm, mm.
gluttony. Maybe it's being proud. Maybe it's greedy, but just get a little more deadly. And I think that's my manifestation for this episode.
That's a good one. Can I get, if possible, a little more slothful? Could
Yes,
that be
of course.
mine?
That's one of the ones on
I
the
am gonna
list.
sloth it out. You all will never see me again.
But yeah, be more slothful, get more deadly. Maybe close the murder gap. No, don't. No, don't. For
Please don't.
legal reasons,
No,
it's a
we
joke.
we don't have a list. We get it's
Don't do it. For legal reasons, I'm so funny. I'm a funny, funny lady.
not
Uh,
libel, not libel.
not liable. But what would your manifestation be? Is it to be more slothful? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't do that because I'll break the sound barrier backwards with my activity level. I would say let's manifest having new female identifying people come into our lives that we can platform.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, I would like that. And so if someone comes across you this week that you're like, I don't know who that is, I'm going to look into them, please look into them, and then platform them in some way. Put them on social media. Say, let's fill the areas with more female identifying.
Or more female identifying. I love that. That leads me naturally into telling you that I've enjoyed my time with you so much today. The
Thank
the secret of the podcast is once you're on, you're a friend, and I will bother you.
you. Good. Excellent.
And you're allowed to come back whenever you want because
Every
misogyny,
week. Uh-huh.
yeah, you're my new co-host.
Uh-huh.
Misogyny is ever present
Yeah.
because we made God a dude.
Right.
We
Absolutely.
just decided. So please let the listeners know all of the places that they can connect with you so that they can platform you and make the manifestation true.
Ooh. Yes, you can just put in Deconversion Therapy Podcast. You will find us on TikTok, Instagram, Threads. We left X. And we do have a Facebook page and a secret group that we really protect those people because they might have left religion or they're thinking about it. And so we try to make sure we don't let in any Theo bros, which are like theological seminary 20-year-olds who are going to try and,
Yeah.
convert them. Yeah, look at all those places and I'd just say hi and say, Natalie sent me.
Oh yeah, do that. Just tag me. I love being on the internet. um well, and tolerators, you know all the places to find me on the internet because there's no shortage of me on the internet. But mainly go to Men I've Tolerated Pod on Instagram. That'll get you to the YouTube, the Pinterest, the Facebook, the all of it. But
Oh.
yeah, but you could also join maybe a paid tier, maybe a free tier on
Hmm.
Patreon, because that's where we're doing the misogyny meltdown, the comedy hour, sometimes 2 hours about misogyny and all that comes with it. And
That's
that
fun.
and that's where I'm going to start cutting the things that I can't tell you but I want to tell you.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yes.
someone I know will be mad that I told you. So,
Shh.
and I forgot to talk in coded language for liability. So,
Mm.
go over to Patreon. $5 a month, you get to know all my secrets.
And yes, and as a fellow podcaster, I want to say how important it is because people, we pay for our entertainment and for our education and all these things. And it is so little to give to something like your podcast to keep it going because these things can be expensive.
Yeah.
Between not just the gear, but all the little effing apps you have to get to make a picture look good, to clip a video.
Yeah.
So please support this podcast.
Yes. For International Women's Month, which it won't be anymore when you're listening to this, but every day is International Women's
That's
Day
right.
when you're me and when you're fighting Christianity and everyday misogyny. So remember, tolerators, you don't have to smile through anything you're tolerating, including looking at all of the fun things that you could be doing, but being told by an invisible dude in the sky that they're bad for you and they're bad for your mom and they're bad for your dad.
Yeah.
Smiles are for joy.